Let's start with a question most people never think to ask. What if the fat stored around your organs isn't just sitting there, but actively working against your brain right now without any visible warning signs? That might sound extreme, but the science is clear. Research shows that visceral fat, the fat stored deep inside your abdominal cavity, directly alters brain structure, cognitive performance, and emotional regulation. Not over decades, not eventually, measurably, right now. In this video, we are going to break down exactly how this happens, from the biology of fat cells, to the gut-brain axis, to the metabolic signals that control your hunger, focus, and energy. And more importantly, we are going to walk through what the science says you can actually do about it.
What changes when visceral fat drops? When you reduce visceral fat and restore gut health, the research is specific. Circulating inflammatory cytokines like IL-6, TNF-alpha, and CRP measurably decline within weeks. Microglial activation in the brain decreases, reducing neuroinflammatory load. BDNF levels begin to recover, supporting memory formation and mental clarity. Hypothalamic insulin sensitivity improves. Hunger signals normalize, cravings reduce. Energy, metabolism stabilizes, blood sugar volatility and energy crashes diminish. People consistently describe this shift as thinking more clearly, feeling more emotionally stable, having more sustained energy, and experiencing fewer compulsive cravings. This is the biological consequence of reduced systemic inflammation and a restored metabolic signaling environment. Your brain begins working with your biology, not against it. Let's get into it. To never miss a video. Before we go deeper, if you want real, science-backed content on fat loss, metabolism, and insulin resistance, hit subscribe right now. Because here, we don't fix symptoms, we fix the root cause. 2 types of fat. What most people get wrong? When most people think about body fat, they picture the layer of fat just beneath the skin, the kind you can pinch. That is called subcutaneous fat. Visceral fat is completely different. Visceral fat is stored inside the abdominal cavity, wrapped around your liver, kidneys, pancreas, and intestines. Unlike subcutaneous fat, it does not simply sit there. It functions as an active endocrine organ. It secretes pro-inflammatory signaling molecules like adipokines, cytokines, interleukins, and tumor necrosis factor alpha that enter your bloodstream and circulate throughout your entire body. A 2019 study in the journal Obesity found that visceral fat volume was independently associated with elevated levels of interleukin-6 and C-reactive protein. These are 2 of the most reliable markers of systemic inflammation. And here is why that matters. Your brain is not isolated from your bloodstream. The blood-brain barrier is permeable to particularly when inflammatory load is chronically elevated. So the inflammation originating in your visceral fat does not stay in your abdomen. It reaches your brain. Visceral fat and the brain. Real, measurable changes. Inside your brain, you have specialized immune cells called microglia. Under normal conditions, they maintain brain homeostasis, clearing waste, pruning synapses, supporting neural repair. But when systemic inflammation is persistently elevated, microglia become chronically activated, a process called neuroinflammation. And neuroinflammation has real, measurable consequences. Reduced synaptic plasticity, the brain's ability to form and strengthen new connections. Impaired hippocampal function, critical for memory, consolidation, and spatial reasoning. Disrupted prefrontal cortex activity, affecting executive function and decision-making. Reduced production of BDNF, the protein responsible for neuron survival and growth. A landmark study published in Neurology using MRI brain imaging found that higher visceral adaptation was associated with lower total brain volume. Even after controlling for age, sex, and BMI, this was structural brain loss, visible on a scan. That brain fog, the inability to focus, the mental fatigue, the feeling that your thinking is slower, that is not a personality trait. It is frequently a measurable inflammatory process. 2 people can have the same weight, the same BMI, the same waist, and one can have dramatically higher visceral fat. This is why BMI alone is such a poor predictor of metabolic health. Your gastrointestinal system contains approximately 500 million neurons and produces around 95% of your body's serotonin. It communicates bidirectionally with your brain via the vagus nerve. This is what researchers refer to as the gut-brain axis. A healthy, diverse microbiome produces short-chain fatty acids like butyrate. These reduce intestinal permeability and protect the gut lining. It also regulates immune activation, preventing chronic low-grade inflammation, and modulates neurotransmitter production, influencing mood, appetite, and cognitive function. But when the gut lining becomes permeable, bacterial endotoxins leak into the bloodstream. This triggers an immune response, generating more inflammation. Research linked reduced gut microbiome diversity with increased systemic inflammation, insulin resistance, and impaired cognitive performance. Visceral fat generates inflammation. Gut dysbiosis generates inflammation. Each one worsens the other. The cycle begins with gut inflammation, causing central insulin resistance in the brain. This disrupts the hypothalamus, which regulates hunger and metabolic rate. A disrupted hypothalamus increases cravings and impairs the sensation of fullness. More calorie-dense food leads to more visceral fat and more inflammation. This is not a willpower problem. This is a biology problem. The good news: visceral fat is metabolically active and responds faster to physiological changes. When you address the root drivers, it shifts rapidly. Here's how to break the cycle. First, restore gut microbiome diversity. Soluble fiber, like psyllium husk and ground flaxseed, ferments in the colon, producing butyrate and short-chain fatty acids that feed beneficial bacteria and strengthen the gut lining. Studies show improving microbiome diversity directly reduces inflammatory cytokine production. Second, support bile flow and fat digestion. Artichoke extract stimulates bile production and flow. Poor fat digestion impairs absorption of fat-soluble vitamins A, D, and K, all of which play roles in immune regulation and brain function. Third, introduce fermented foods strategically. Lacto-fermented vegetables, like sauerkraut and kimchi, increase diversity. Fourth, repair the gut barrier. Bone broth contains collagen, gelatin, and proline, all of which support the structural integrity of the gut lining. L-glutamine serves as primary fuel for enterocytes, and research supports its role in reducing intestinal permeability. Fifth, address the four root signals: sleep, blood sugar stability, gut barrier integrity, and systemic inflammation. Poor sleep independently predicts visceral fat accumulation. Chronic glucose spikes drive insulin resistance, which drives visceral fat storage. A compromised gut barrier is a primary driver of systemic inflammation. Reducing inflammatory load directly reduces the neuroinflammatory burden on the brain. When you address these four signals simultaneously, visceral fat loss becomes a biological consequence of a system returning to its natural equilibrium.
So let's bring this together. Belly fat is not simply a cosmetic issue. Visceral fat functions as an endocrine organ that actively generates inflammation, disrupts gut function, impairs brain signaling, and measurably alters brain structure. The gut-brain axis is real and bidirectional, and chronic visceral fat and gut dysbiosis work together to push it in the wrong direction. The solution is not to chase weight loss. It is to fix the biological signals and allow your body to restore its own equilibrium.
If you found this video valuable, hit subscribe. Every week, we go deeper into the science of metabolism, inflammation, and how your biology actually works. Tap the video on your screen right now. Next, we cover a fasting-based protocol. This protocol specifically targets visceral fat at the hormonal level. Stay locked in. The next one might change everything.